I was deep in a brief on a quiet Tuesday, reading glasses on, coffee cooling beside my legal pad, when my front door creaked and a woman's voice floated up from my kitchen. Blatant violations. Section 12.3, subsection B. She was snapping photos inside my house, inside my kitchen, during what she called an HOA inspection. She had no idea I'm a federal judge. If you want to hear how that blew up in her face, smash like, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss the wild turn at the end. I moved to Maple Ridge Estates for the calm. After decades on the bench, I wanted routine that didn't involve sirens, subpoenas, or men in gray suits whispering in hallways. My days had settled into something gentle: early walks, careful coffee, checking in on neighbors, and reading on the back porch where the sycamores were old enough to have names. Most folks around here were solid people: retired nurses, school teachers, a couple who ran a bait shop before our town went more cul-de-sac than catfish. We waved. We looked after each other's packages. We kept the sidewalks clear after a storm. That's the kind of neighborhood I signed up for. That morning, though, the calm was broken by heels, confident, clicking heels on my hardwood floor. I came to the landing and looked down. There she was in the middle of my kitchen like she owned it. Late 30s, maybe pushing 40, long blonde hair like a shampoo commercial, bold red, sleeveless, deep V-neck shirt that didn't belong in anyone's kitchen at 10 in the morning, white pants so crisp they looked ironed onto her, phone out, flash off, taking photos of my cupboards like they were crime scenes. "This pantry is non-compliant," she murmured, open shelving visible from exterior windows. "We can't have that." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Ma'am, you're in my home." She barely glanced up. "Sir, I'm in your residence to perform a permitted inspection under Maple Ridge Estates covenants and restrictions. The board authorized it." She held up a clipboard like a badge. But I've seen real badges, and this wasn't one. "You're new here," she added. "We like things done right." "Then start with the law," I said, coming down the stairs. "There's no authority in these covenants for you to enter my house uninvited. I'm not a man who moves quickly anymore. Not like I did when my knees were young. But surprise has a way of tightening your joints." I made it to the bottom step and saw something that locked the breath in my chest. A small brass key dangling from her fingers. Not my key. Not any spare I'd handed to a neighbor. My key, as in the emergency lockbox key we're required to keep on our porch for firefighters and EMTs. She had it like it was her car fob. "Where did you get that?" I asked. She gave me a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We have access for safety." She slid the key into her white pants pocket. "Name's Karen. I'm the president of the HOA. You'll be receiving notices." I've met many people like her in courtrooms across America. Folks who wrap themselves in rules the way kids hide under blankets, peeking out to see who's watching, certain they're safe because they've got a clipboard and a chorus of fine print. I tried being neighborly. I told her I'm Daniel Reed, though most people call me Judge Reed, and that I'd be happy to talk about any exterior concerns at a proper time, at my door, not in my kitchen. She nodded along, feigning patience, but I saw that gleam in her eye. It said, "I've got power you don't know about." She left without apology. She left with the key. That's when the drip started. A note on my mailbox about its height, half an inch over regulation. A photo slipped under my doormat of my recycling bins, visible from the street during daylight hours, highlighted in yellow. An email to all neighbors with a subject line that might as well have been a scarlet letter. Community standards reminder, trash day discipline. And then one of those digital newsletters, congratulations to the neighborhood kids, happy birthday to Mrs. Gibson, and a little sidebar about how a few residents were dragging down property values with flagrant disregard for harmony. I measured my mailbox twice like a man checking his blood pressure on a bad day. I set a reminder for trash bins like I was clocking in at a factory. I brought over a pie to the couple across the street, Ruth and Walt, who used to wave from their porch swing. Ruth answered the door but kept the screen between us. "We got the email," she said. "I'm sure it's not about you." She didn't invite me in. The next morning I found a bright pink slip inside my mailbox, an additional non-compliance notice with a list of problems that read like a scavenger hunt written by someone who didn't like me much. Weeds by the oak, they were violets. A non-approved bird feeder, it was a standard tube feeder you could buy at any big box store. And pergola, seen from neighboring property with non-conforming shade cloth, which I hadn't even installed yet. It felt petty. It felt personal. But mixed with the petty was something else that made my skin crawl. The sense that Karen knew things about my place you couldn't see from the street. That night, the back door was unlocked. I know because I checked doors. Age will do that to you. You think about safety in a way you didn't when you were 20 and invincible. I didn't panic. I did what I do best. I went methodical. I called my old friend Mike. He's one of those careful, quiet men who can wire a barn without Googling it. And together we installed a camera system like the kind you see at banks. Motion alerts, cloud backup, the works. I set it to notify me if anyone crossed the threshold. I told myself I was being cautious, not paranoid. Still, when I woke up the next day to a soft ding on my phone, I felt that cold finger down the spine. There was a video. Tuesday, 2:14 p.m., the front door, Karen in that same bold red sleeveless, deep V-neck shirt and white pants, long blonde hair brushed over one shoulder, looking like a fashion ad for bad ideas. She used the emergency lockbox key. She let herself in. 47 minutes inside my house. The second clip showed her sweeping the camera with a bored glance, like she'd done this a dozen times and nothing surprised her anymore. She narrated to herself like an architect inspecting drywall. Laundry room sink, non-compliant hose, books stacked by exit, trip hazard, low window lock, security violation. You know the way teenagers talk to themselves when they think they're alone? That was Karen, only middle-aged and drunk on authority. I watched 3 weeks of Tuesdays. 3 times she entered while I was out getting groceries or at the doctor. 3 times she left with photos on her phone. On the 3rd Tuesday, she paused in my study and stared a long while at the shadow box on my wall, the one with a badge and a few mementos from cases I'll never talk about outside of a courtroom. She held her phone up and took a picture. I felt my hands go hot. I'm not reckless. I didn't storm the HOA office like a man in a sitcom. I didn't shout at the next board meeting or call anyone names. I made a plan that would hold up like a steel beam when the wind started. I set my car a block over in my neighbor's driveway with their blessing. I turned off a light or two, brewed a fresh pot, and sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a stack of printed statutes. When the lockbox clicked and the door swung open, I let her take 5 steps in before I spoke. "Good afternoon, Ms. President," I said. "Next time, knock." Karen froze. Then she recovered faster than some lawyers I know. "I'm in the middle of an inspection," she said, lifting her chin. "You're impeding a governance function." "What you're impeding is the 4th Amendment," I answered, not unkindly. "Also, 3 sections of our state code, 2 local ordinances, and a thing my mother called common sense." I slid the printouts across the table, not unlike how I used to slide rulings to a clerk. "We have exterior standards in this neighborhood, sure. We do not have the authority to go into people's homes without permission and take pictures of their belongings." She laughed in that bright, brittle way people laugh when they know they're caught but think if they smile big enough, they can walk through a wall. "You must be new. We've always done interior checks here." "No," I said, and I placed my phone on the table with the screen lit, the play bar midway through a video with her face clear as a billboard at noon. "You've done this here. You, not the board, and not with any authority in the covenants or the law. You've used an emergency key for non-emergency purposes, and you've done it repeatedly. That's not inspection. That's trespass." Her eyes flicked to the phone, back to me, and narrowed. She set her clipboard down too hard, papers skittering like thin white fish across the table. "You want to play hardball?" she whispered. "You'll regret it. The board will bury you in fines so deep you'll be digging with a spoon." I've had defendants threaten to break my jaw, and lawyers threaten to break my career. Empty threats don't scare me. It's the quiet ones that matter, the ones that slither in, coil, and wait. I nodded instead of rising to her bait. "We're done here," I said, and I walked her to the door with the kind of manner you use when you're showing a guest out of a wake. She stared at me like she was memorizing the way my mouth formed words. "Have a good day," I added. It was the truth. I planned to make it a very good day. If you're watching and you're over 60 like me, you know this part by heart. It's the turn where folks who used to wave stop waving. You become the topic of a group text you weren't invited to. The woman who used to chat you up at the mailbox now studies her shoes like there's something fresh down there. People don't want trouble, and they sure don't want to stand next to it and say, "I know him." That's not who he is. Within 24 hours, the newsletter dropped an extra edition. "Leadership under attack," the subject line read, because of course it did. The body accused a certain homeowner of interfering with routine compliance checks. A flyer materialized on a few porches, mine included, with a photo of my driveway and the words "serial non-compliant" stamped over it in angry red letters. Someone dragged my trash cans into the street and spread lawn clippings up my walkway like confetti after a parade nobody asked for. I swept it myself. I've always believed you clean up your own mess. I documented everything: dates, times, screenshots, videos. I called the non-emergency police line and asked for an officer to drop by. Officer Haley Chen showed up, new to the force, the kind who still believes the job is about helping people, and I laid it all out. The lockbox, the videos, the intrusion into my study where my personal items were kept. I didn't puff up my title. I didn't say I'm a judge, so jump. I said, I'm a neighbor whose home was entered without consent using a key that's supposed to be for life-saving emergencies. I want to file a report. She filed it. Then I called a civil rights attorney I trust, Natalie Brooks, steady as a church pew, and asked her to have a look. She sat in my kitchen with a pad and the kind of pen that only serious lawyers buy and said, "Trespass, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, if we can link the smears to her." She tapped the videos on my phone like she was testing a watermelon. "These are gold. We'll get her deposition. We'll get the board's minutes. We'll get that lockbox policy pulled from its dusty binder." The HOA announced a special meeting about my conduct for the following Thursday at 7 p.m. I RSVP'd attending and added a polite note that I'd be bringing an audio-visual presentation under the section of their bylaws that says you can use the projector if you sign up in advance. You learn in my line of work to use a person's rules like a mirror. It lets them see themselves. The room was packed. Folks who usually don't bother with these things showed up with folded arms and unreadable faces. Karen sat at the head of the folding table in that same bold red sleeveless deep V-neck shirt and white pants. I wondered if she had multiples like Steve Jobs and his black turtlenecks. The board's secretary, a thin man with a permanent smile named Garrett Price, spooned extra sugar into his coffee and wouldn't meet my eyes. Karen called the meeting to order with the gavel she'd bought on the HOA budget. "We have serious business," she said. "A homeowner is undermining safety inspections." "Before we get too far down that road," I said, keeping my voice friendly, "I'd like to play a few short clips. Officer Chen, would you do me the honor?" The officer had come, per my request, which was not a small thing. People sit up straighter when a uniform enters a room, even if they pretend they don't. I connected my laptop to their projector and pressed play. The first clip, my front door, Tuesday 2:14 p.m., the brass key, the swing. The second clip, the following Tuesday, same thing. The third 1 week later. Karen in my study, pausing at my shadow box, holding her phone up, tilting her head the way people tilt it when they're either curious or hungry. You could feel the air go thin. Ruth's hand went to her mouth. Walt muttered, "Good Lord." Mike, my handyman friend, let out a breath I didn't know he'd been holding. Garrett, to his credit, cleared his throat and asked the question plain. "Karen, did you enter Daniel's home without his permission?" "I was authorized," she snapped. "We've always had the right to inspect interiors." "Show me," I said, my finger tapping lightly on the binder of covenants on the table. She flipped pages like a magician trying to find the rabbit. Section 12.3, landscaping. Section 8.1, exterior finishes. Section 5.4, architectural review. Nowhere did it say anything about interior inspections, much less using an emergency lockbox key for anything but an emergency. "Enough," Garrett said, voice trembling just a hair. "Motion to remove Karen as president pending investigation." The vote wasn't close. Unanimous. It would have been unanimous even if Karen were allowed to vote for herself. She stared at me like I'd pulled a rug. But the thing about rugs is, if you're standing on something that never belonged under your feet, it isn't your rug that's being yanked. It's the truth coming out from under you. After that meeting, the dam broke. People talk once the first pebble falls. Mike came by with 2 beers we didn't need and told me that last spring, he'd come home from the beach and found his living room clock 20 minutes fast and his throw blanket folded differently than he'd left it. He thought maybe he'd misremembered. The Chens down on Willow had ring footage of Karen testing their side window like a raccoon checking a latch. Tug, pause, tug. The corner couple, the Bakers, remembered hearing heels in the hall when they were supposed to be at a board luncheon. None of them had said anything because nobody wants to be that neighbor, the paranoid one, the crank. And nobody wants to pick a fight with a woman who knows how to write fines like love letters. Discovery in our civil suit turned up spiral notebooks. Neat, tidy, serial killer tidy. Names and addresses. Who lived alone? Who had grandchildren visiting? Who kept cash in a kitchen jar? The brand of laundry soap I use. The note about the low lock on my study window. Pages dating back 2 years. It wasn't an HOA ledger. It was a map of people's lives drawn by someone who thought borders didn't apply to her. The district attorney didn't take long. We were in court before the leaves had a chance to turn fully. I wasn't on the bench. I was in the witness chair for once, a place that feels like a stage when you've spent your life behind the curtain. The prosecutor was steady. The defense was panicked. The evidence was the kind you don't forget. Videos with timestamps that don't lie. The notebooks that make your stomach twist. Neighbors who spoke in simple words that juries believe. The most brutal moment came when the prosecutor put up a photo from Karen's phone taken in my study, the one of my shadow box with the badge, and asked, "Did you think you were entitled to photograph this?" Karen squared her shoulders in that red, sleeveless, deep V-neck shirt like armor. "I thought I had to," she said, "for the good of the community." And that's the thing about people who wrong you with rules. They always think they're saving you from yourself. The jury didn't buy it. They went out at 2:10 and came back at 4 to say what everyone knew by 9:30 that morning. Guilty on criminal trespass. Guilty on misuse of emergency resources. Guilty on unlawful surveillance. She clutched the table the way people clutch the bar on a roller coaster they didn't want to ride. Sentencing day came, and the courtroom was packed the way living rooms get packed on Thanksgiving. Only instead of turkey, there was justice on the table. Judge Elena Park sat straight as a fence post and spoke as if someone might cut each word out and put it in a scrapbook. She gave Karen time behind bars, not a slap on the wrist. Probation after that. Community service that actually meant something. Reporting to a local shelter, cleaning up public parks, writing apology letters not crafted by a PR firm but written by her hand in her words. Restitution to every homeowner she'd violated. As for our civil suit, Natalie negotiated reforms that should have been obvious. A new lockbox policy that put keys where they belonged, in a special fire department vault only accessed by first responders, with a strict log, double-signed. No interior inspections. No entry without a warrant or written consent. A community oversight committee made up of 6 homeowners chosen by peers, not picked by a president with a pen and a taste for power. You'd think the story ends with a bow, the kind you see in feel-good movies and Christmas specials. But real life isn't a bow. It's a good coat that keeps you warm because you don't quit wearing it. I went back to my porch, to my quiet coffee, to my books, and to a mailbox whose height I could tell you to the 1/8 of an inch. Ruth and Walt started waving again. The Bakers brought over a pie like neighbors do when they're sorry they faded out for a while. Mike asked if I wanted help putting up the winter lights. I said yes. It took weeks for my hands to stop shaking when the doorbell rang. It took longer for the shadow of those notebooks to stop moving across my walls in the night. I got used to checking the locks twice because that's just who I am now, and maybe that's fine. Age teaches you that a little caution is like sunscreen. You don't notice it until the day you forget. One afternoon, I took a long walk down to the creek and sat on a bench under a sycamore that might be older than our nation's problems. I thought about the way communities work when they work right, when folks pitch in to shovel a driveway or bring a casserole to a widow or fix a mailbox that got clipped by a careless delivery van. I thought about power, how it should be like a broom, used quietly to sweep away messes, then put back where it belongs, not swung at folks' heads just because it's in your hand. I thought about my grandchildren, about the world we leave them in the neighborhoods we teach them to expect. That night, long after the sky turned that soft bruise color that means, close your book, it's time to sleep, I heard the light thump of mail through the slot. Odd hour for mail. I found a plain envelope on the mat. No return address, no stamp. Inside was a key, small and brass, the kind that might open a gym locker or a heart if you believed in metaphors. Taped to it was a scrap of paper. No greeting, no signature, just 2 words. There are more. I stood in my hallway with that key in my palm and felt all the old heat rise in my chest. Then I felt something better, steadier, like a candle someone set in the right window. I took a photo of the envelope, the key, the note. I put them all in a sandwich bag and in my safe. Then I called Officer Chen and left a message as calm as the morning before a storm. I called Natalie and said, "It seems our little story has an epilogue." And I brewed coffee, because some nights coffee is your friend, even if the clock says it's not. Listen, if you're watching this and you've got a Karen in your life, she doesn't have to wear a bold red sleeveless deep V-neck shirt and white pants with long blonde hair. But if you've got someone who thinks a clipboard is a crown, hear me. You're not alone and you're not powerless. Document. Be polite. Polite is a superpower when used by the right person at the right time. Ask for help. Use the rules. The law is not a stick. It's a fence. It doesn't keep the good in. It keeps the bad out. And when someone tells you, "We've always done it this way," smile like your grandmother taught you and say, "Then it's time we didn't." I won't pretend that mail didn't shake me. I won't pretend that I didn't sleep with the lamp on like a kid with a comic book the first night it came. But I also won't pretend I'm afraid to open my front door. I look through the peephole, sure. I take my time. Then I open it because this is my home, and I moved here to live in it, not to be afraid of it. The only people who should use that emergency lockbox are the ones running toward flames with hoses, not toward kitchens with clipboards. We're going to find out what that key opens. We're going to find out who sent it and whether they meant harm or help. Maybe it's a neighbor saying, "I found this behind the HOA office desk, and I didn't want to leave it there." Maybe it's someone who thinks they're clever. Maybe it's a person in a red shirt and white pants playing a last hand from a bad deck. I've learned not to guess. I've learned to gather, to measure, to keep my voice even when the floor tilts. And if you're one of my neighbors from Maple Ridge Estates watching this, know this. I'm the same man you waved to from your porch. I'll still bring your can in if you forget. I'll still pick up your package if it rains. I'll still show up at the potluck with cornbread that tastes like my mother's Oklahoma kitchen. I'll still sit next to you at the meeting and vote for the landscaping that makes the street pretty in May. But I will also always stand up when the gavel goes to the wrong hands. That's not me being difficult. That's me being a neighbor, the way my father taught me and his father taught him. You don't let folks bully other folks when you've got a voice to say stop. I learned long ago that justice isn't a thing on a shelf. It's a verb. It happens when you act. So I'll act. I'll take that key to the right hands. I'll follow the paper trail. I'll do it with patience and with my chin up and with a little humor when it helps. And when the next chapter of this drops, well, we'll do what we did before. Set the record straight together. If you want to see how the rest of this plays out, if you want to know what door that key opens and what comes out when it turns, smash like, hit subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss the wild turn at the end. I'm not done sweeping, and something tells me neither is she.